So good morning and welcome to the July enthusiastic but perhaps a little small CEEPC meeting. And I hope you all are having an enjoyable summer despite the changing climate bringing us uh, wildfire smoke, heat domes, and of course dry, dry, dry. Nevertheless, we are here and we're happy to be here and enjoying what's left of the summer. I can't believe I'm actually saying that in the end of July. So was to adopt the meeting summary from the May meeting. If we don't have a quorum, maybe we'll skip that for now. Who's checking that?
We don't quite have a quorum yet, Madam Chair.
All right, so we'll go on. The next topic on the agenda, which has been shortchanged in recent meetings, is member and committee updates. And the first update is from me about the mid-course review and the COG board. So when last you all heard, you had encouraged staff to get on the agenda for the COG board, which was successful. However, they canceled their July meeting, and we are now on the agenda for September 9th. And what we will do with the COG board, at your direction, is first to have Maya go through a summary of the mid-course review, talk about the recommendations, and then I will pose some discussion questions for them, what this means for the board and the region moving forward. And so I'm excited. I am really excited about it. And thank you all for pushing us to elevate this. If there are any questions about that, we'll be back at the September 23rd meeting to fill you in. But if there are any questions about that now, either raise your hand or put it in the chat, and I might, Maya and Leah, need a little help with the hand raising part. Anybody have any questions? Maybe with a small group, just speak out. Okay, so seeing no questions. And if you are,
Madam Chair,
yes,
we have a quorum. We do have a quorum now. Just so
thank you. I was just about to ask. And so we'll back up, and our first order of business to adopt the meeting summary from May. That was a great meeting. Thank you all for participating. So I would be looking for a motion. Please speak up because I can't see hands.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Can I please have a second?
Second, this is Tom from Manassas.
Thank you, Tom from Manassas, and whoever that other person was. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to only ask for no's and abstentions, and you can either put it in the chat or speak up online. So no's, any no's? Any abstentions? Okay, so we will call that approved. Thank you very much. So back to member and committee updates. And I should add that after that we have 3 really interesting presentations. So hang in there. So first, an update from BIAC from Leah, is Chair Mari Bazuto here?
No, she's not able to make it, Madam Chair,
Okay.
so I'm giving the update. And
Take
you
it
all
away,
can hear
Leah.
me? Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
So at BIAC's last meeting in June, we discussed energy insecurity, energy affordability, and utility disconnections across the metropolitan Washington region. We had Dr. Sonia Carley from the University of Pennsylvania, and she's also co-director of the Energy Justice Lab. She discussed the prevalence of energy insecurity and provided a comparative assessment of strategies. And staff provided an overview of gas and electric utilities in the region. So some highlights of those presentations include electricity prices have increased by 30% on an average over the past 5 years. The average residential electricity bill in the US in 2024 was about $144. This would make the average electricity bill increase by over $12. And based on the utility reported data from 2024, there were about 15 million households across the nation that were disconnected. And I am hearing some feedback, so I don't know if I should pause, so let me know. And then specifically in the region, there were over 400,000 household disconnections. And this utility data is from utilities reported in our region. So that would include Pepco, Washington Gas, the Virginia gas and electric utilities that cover the COG footprint, as well as those in the Maryland southern suburbs. And additionally, some other highlights where there is a consistent gap between disconnections and reconnections. The total number of reconnections in the region was about 49,000 compared to the disconnections in 2024, which was 400,000 households. And this data, the data source for this information is the Utility Disconnection Dashboard, which is developed by the Energy Justice Lab, and they gather information from utility reports, data received from open records, requests from municipal utilities, and other data shared from partners. I will say that the reconnection data for Virginia is unavailable. So that 49,000 reconnections in 2024, which is the most recent data from EIA, does not include Virginia reconnection data because they do not report. And then finally, EIA estimates that the prices will continue to increase, as we can see globally, by an estimated 8.5% this year. So for more information, all the presentations are on BIAC's June meeting page, as well as the recording. BIAC's next meeting is September 17th. And thank you. That's it for me, Madam Chair.
Yeah, thank you. That was scary. Any comments or questions before we move on? Please just jump in. Okay. Next, Air and Climate Public Advisory Committee. Is Ian Marcus available?
No, Madam Chair, we have another member of ACPAC, Bill Washburn. If you remember him, he was the
Oh yeah,
previous
hi
chair.
Bill.
So
Hello.
Bill, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Leah. And thank you, Chair DeBala. I appreciate the opportunity to provide this update on our last ACPAC meeting, which was held on July the 20th. First off, our chair and vice chair, Ian Marcus, represent Maryland, Chris Tandy, represent Virginia. At this time they're unable to make these meetings to provide the update for on behalf of AFPAC. So I've been designated to do this on their behalf. To start off, ACPAC successfully concluded their Climate Awards campaign earlier this month. We had extended the application deadline to July the 7th, and as a result, the campaign attracted 24 applications, an increase over last year's over last year's participation in the Climate Awards. I want to highlight leadership of Ms. Boggs in championing the continuation of the program, along with Madeline Stoddard's significant contribution to the success of this year's campaign. The winners in each category have been determined, and they will be announced at the fall cardboard meeting. At the July meeting, we received an update on the ozone season. In response to the presentation, members made the following recommendations. First, to expand the analysis to examine the impact of PJM's emergency request that permitted high electric loads like data centers to operate backup generators during the May and July heat waves. Second, we are recommending the analysis to assess fine particles like black carbon and ozone because we've not gotten good enough analysis of this, and this is especially important as we've seen the impact of fine particle pollution from the wildfires in Canada and also parts of the United States. And so we're asking for improvements in this area. Black carbon counting appears to be better at monitoring these trends. Also, the final recommendation was the use of ultrafine particulate sensors that detect very small subsets of PM 2.5, and that is 20 nanometers or less. At this size, the particles can pass into the olfactory brain barrier and cause cognitive diseases such as Alzheimer's. And knowing that, especially as our population gets older, this issue is going to be even more important. We are asking that these recommendations be considered at the policy level. And with that, that concludes my report on behalf of the ACPAC. And our next meeting is September the 21st. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to respond to them.
I have a question.
Yes.
So the recommendations that you described, did they get, can they get circulated to CEEPC members? Are they on the website and I just missed them?
Okay. Medea, can you help me out on that?
Yes, I'm
Yeah,
on
that
the
might
li-
be a question from there.
Yes, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Madam Chair.
I,
Yeah, these are only presented verbally. So if it sounds like you're asking for them to be submitted in a memo format, and if so, we could likely do that for CEEPC, and we would have to do that for MWAC as well because these are related to air quality. So if you could clarify, that is what you're asking for.
I guess that's up to the committee, to make committee chairs and the staff, but I would appreciate it since these are pretty important. It might be worth having them written down and circulated more widely than perhaps is typical.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else?
Thank you.
Yeah, so we have a couple more people saying they'd like to read and review the recommendations. Great. Okay, next, from the RevDig working group, electric vehicle deployment in the region, is Chair Amy Posner here?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Amy.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Yeah, I'm Amy Posner, the electric vehicle planner for City of Alexandria. So our RevD met on July 16th, and we started with an office hours segment where members can share updates on their different EV programs. We heard from folks on some zoning updates, as well as new and expanded charging programs and some new policies and incentives at the state and local level. Amanda Campbell from City of Rockville presented with a representative from Turbocharge on their first deployment in the US of Turbocharge equipment in the right-of-way, where you can install a shallow channel in the sidewalk to pass a charging cable through. And then John Thomas from DDOT presented on DC's advances in their medium and heavy duty vehicle electrification and some of their approaches to charging and resilience with their solar and battery storage facilities.
Excellent, thank you. Anybody have any questions or comments? Okay, moving on to Antoine Thompson, Director Thompson, and the Greater Washington Regional Clean Cities Coalition. Take it away.
Good morning. Good morning. How's it going? I'll be really brief. Just wanted to say good afternoon to everyone. Two quick things. We will be, we're in the final contract phase for a regional project that we'll be doing some testing of EV charging stations. As you know, reliability is a big issue. So we'll be, it's a federal grant. We will be testing about 100 or so chargers around the region. So we will be sometime this fall starting that project. As we move forward, we'll be reaching out to you to see. It's like about a 20-minute process. And we'll be rolling it up to a part of another a federal project. The second thing I just wanted to quickly mention is that we are still taking nominations for our Clean Energy and Clean Transportation Awards. I'll put that in the chat as well. The deadline is on Friday, in the business on Friday. So October 21st, 22nd as well. October 22nd, Greenbelt, Maryland is our we'll be celebrating 15 years as a standalone nonprofit. As you know, we grew out of COG over 33 years ago. And so just wanted to share those things as well. And if you're doing activities for Drive Electric Month, which is in end of September to early October, let us know so we can support some of those efforts as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Short, but really, really sweet. Any comments or questions? I imagine Tacoma is not the only place where people complain about EV charger reliability in the public space. Okay,
I just wanted
next.
to do a quick shout
Yes.
out to the work that Antoine and his folks are doing. I really enjoy always seeing the different events that you're leading and the awards that you're doing, and just tremendous effort. Thank you very much.
Yes. Okay, so next, Recycling Committee. Michelle, Chair Michelle Blair.
Madam Chair, actually, it's going to be John Snar, COG staff.
Thank you, John. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll be brief. We got a full agenda. Basically, we just completed in June our 2026 COG battery management campaign. This is something we've done for the past couple of years. It's proved quite popular with our members and our sponsors, given that battery fires are a huge problem for both waste management crews and fire departments in the region. So our sponsors include both local governments and private sector waste haulers and even some fire departments. So all the media time was paid for with those public and private sponsorships. And I'm happy to announce this is our biggest campaign ever. June 3rd through 30th, $100,000 media buy using sponsor funds. We were on broadcast radio, digital streaming radio, paid social media, and digital web spots. Should have some outcomes in the next month or so for how that worked out. And we also gave out America Recycles Day Award contest winner to Prince William County, which we do every year. So appreciate all the sponsor support, and I'm glad that we're trying to get that message out there. So that's it.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions from the group? Okay, the next topic is the Regional Tree Canopy Subcommittee. And I do not see Chair Brian Tately. So is that right? So I have the update here. The Regional Tree Canopy Subcommittee is advancing development of that tree canopy action plan that we talked about a while ago. And they expect to circulate a draft for review and input by the end of August from RTCS partners. I'm not sure if that includes us or if we're in the next round. Can anyone on staff answer that question? Okay, so what we'll do then is we'll just keep an eye on that, and in September we'll tune back in. But I'm excited that they're that close to the end of developing the plan. Jeff, did you want to say something?
I was just going to say we'll look into it. Who is going to be in these rounds of review?
Okay. The question is, when does CEEPC get to see it? Not who's in the first round
Okay.
of review.
Gotcha.
Just so we can stay tuned, because I think there are people who'd really like to see it. Okay, so that's it for the committees and those member activities. Now we're going to staff updates and member roundtable. So now is the time for any members to briefly share any updates about what's going on in your community. And we'll go by state / jurisdiction. So we'll start with DC, and again, just speak up. Are there any updates from DC? Going once, going twice. Are there any updates from Virginia? Everybody's still absorbing the results of the mid-course review and not thinking locally here. Any updates from Maryland?
Hi
Shannon?
We recently completed a climate and energy action plan in Frederick County between the city and the county in partnership with COG. And we are working on updates to our alternative fuel vehicle plan and to our greenhouse gas emissions inventory for last year or 2 years ago.
Great,
Last year.
great. Lauren?
Hi there. As Shannon said, I'm here with the city of Frederick, standing in for Jenny Willoughby, who wasn't able to attend today. We worked collaboratively with Frederick County to put together our climate and energy action plan, and we're both getting ready to launch a public dashboard with the results of that plan, actions that are being taken, and it's like this live dynamic system that's going to help us track our progress with the plan. Hopefully that will be released soon to the public, probably in the late summer, early fall.
Great. Anybody else from Maryland? I have one. Speaking of dashboards, Dory, do you want to talk about the dashboard in Tacoma Park?
Yeah, actually I had a hand up, so it's a good segue from last speaker.
Yeah, I can't see hands. I don't know why.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, Tacoma Park just launched the Clear Path 2.0 climate dashboard, and we had a public webinar about it earlier this month. It was, pretty high level overview about how we're using that tool, not just to track our progress, but some of what we anticipate its modeling capabilities are going to be. And Maya has been a great resource as we've navigated the challenges of starting to move to 2.0. That dashboard recording is online on our website on our climate page in case anyone's interested, and always happy to stay in touch as we experiment with it more. Thanks.
Yeah, I was not sure about it, to be honest, and now that we have it, I love it. So do take a look at the Frederick and Tacoma dashboards if you don't have one yourself. Would any other members like to share? Going once, going twice. Speak up, because I'm having trouble with the hands. Okay, so we'll go on to staff updates. Are there Okay, so we have a special update from Sunny Westcott on the state of the climate. And then we'll see whether there are any other COD staff updates. Sunny?
Hello, everybody. Good morning. I wanted to take a quick second and just share. I'm going to share my screen as I go through this just so that you guys can track some of the information that's going on. So I know that you guys have all heard through the news we're in a super El Nino. I wanted to annotate that's just the news agency's verbiage to add on to that. It's just a strong El Nino. It matches a lot with our 2015-2016 El Nino. So if we're going to be using El Nino for any indicators, just only go as far back as the 2015-2016 event. The only other event that you'd be able to compare with was the 1958 event, and that was significantly too far back for a lot of our built infrastructure, interconnectivities, all of those different things. So if you want to use past events as a foot stomp, 2015, 2016, there was a lot of significant flooding that happened in the 50s. During that same El Nino, there was also a lot of flooding that happened. So we are expecting for each thunderstorm cell for the next couple of months to pack notably stronger of a punch when it comes to flash floods. To amplify that concern, wildfire smoke that has happened across the entirety of the US, the Pacific Northwest being on fire now, the Front Range being on fire, Canada being on fire. We are very concerned for where these smoke particulates are landing. They're bringing in higher levels of arsenic and mercury, which is a concern, obviously, for well water as well as algae blooms. But it's also a major concern because, one, the smoke obviously builds up on everything. It gets into air filtration for the buildings, and the air filters don't get cleaned out. So we're ending up with this thick smog that we are seeing the haze of day in, day out. And we're not necessarily doing the proper change out for the filters. To be aware, this will have some major impacts on our crops. So expect to see the vegetation take a major hit going forward. That's just a very interesting study with everything from fruits and vegetables to the cattle not producing enough milk, as well as some of the different livestock that come out being notably less healthy. And of course, children with prolonged exposure have a tendency to develop asthma, despite family conditions that may not be pre-existing. Evaporative demand has gone up for our region specifically. I'm very concerned for the Appalachian Mountains. Everyone else should be as well. Our low flowing rivers across the entirety of the eastern half of the United States, despite going between flash flood, the flash drought and stronger winds problem is getting borderline out of control. We are expecting, because of that higher evaporative demand, the trees are notably weaker. Some states are already reporting that they're seeing fall colors emerge in their forestry. So we're highly concerned that the trees are taking greater damage than we're tracking, and that branches are going to come down way more aggressively over each one of these windstorms. So it's not going to take as much of a wind event for these trees to snap. To be aware specifically, that's a wildfire risk. Absolutely. It's an ember risk, because should a fire start with one of these trees, they're more likely to break apart and thereby those embers spread more rapidly. We're also expecting for fog during the heat wave to not be a thing. So whereas we would normally see that cooling, misting fog for the low grass, do not expect to see that during these heat dome events. Heat disrupts fog. Even though we end up with that stagnant air, we just don't end up with the right conditions for the proper inversion as we go forward. To be aware where we're at with severe weather, we've seen the second highest amount of wind events nationally than we've ever seen. The only other year that's been worse was 2011, which was a devastating year for severe weather. Be aware that we're seeing wind events like these mini derechos, which is why there's a state of disaster declared for South Dakota. Also be aware that these tornadic activity events, the water spouts, as well as our actual tornadoes, are taking on greater intensity. So the water spouts down in Virginia Beach, far more potent. The land spouts, which are like mini tornadoes, are also doing more damage. Again, this has to do a lot with the fact that vegetation is a lot more delicate, and the heat feeds a lot of this. We also know that the particulates from the smoke feed positive lightning strikes. So we are very concerned for the amount that we might see of lightning strike ignitions for wildfires in the forest, as well as just more lightning strikes hitting homes. Those are the ones that typically cause house fires. So these are just some of the different stats that are out there right now. We've had multiple states report new records of hail, and that's both in the numbers of hail events as well as the size of the hailstones. So just be aware these hailstones are heavier. They're doing more damage when they come down, and they're bouncing on impact. So it's a double damage area. These are some of the headlines that are in effect right now. To be aware that no country is doing well South America has been hit with drought, fires. Latin America also drought, fires, heat. India has gone from drought to flash flood back to drought again. And then, of course, the seismic activity that we're seeing across the board. Flash flooding across India, Pakistan, Afghanistan. And of course, just the generalities of the fact that we're losing the wheat crop seemingly on a global spectrum. So the US, Canada, Russia, and Ukraine, which are our top 4 producers of wheat, have all taken massive hits over the last 2 years. And then, of course, we've had to cull a lot of the livestock, so expect to see beef prices go way, way up. But really concerned about some of these notes about the fact that our trees are hitting fall earlier. For those of you who haven't seen the new studies on data centers and the waste heat, data centers obviously produce heat latently for the area around them. So going into this next heat dome and the following heat domes, which are inevitable, be aware that all communities near the data centers are taking an additive in that baseline temperature than everywhere else around them. They may not even be aware of that. You also have the combining effects of air pollution, the increase in lightning strikes that our data centers are starting to see. So that's a major concern. And then, of course, for those of you who didn't know, the data center alley in Virginia is sinking. Some of the data centers are looking to relocate because of just how much they're starting to sink. I've talked to some of the construction owners of the projects in that region. They're annotating that 2 moats have been put in. So they know that they're at risk of flooding because they're now the new lowest lying areas. So expect to see flooding be a major concern for our critical infrastructure in that vein. And then, of course, just also tracking the fact that the overpumping of the water in general in these regions is going to cause permanent damage. Ending on our tropical cyclones, our abnormally warm air and water is fueling some significant changes to the storms in the Pacific, which are really good indicators for our concerns for the Atlantic. So we have these 3 tropical cyclones, one just north of Hawaii, one closer to the US, and then one closer to the Guam area. Be aware that each tropical cyclone that we have seen in the Pacific so far has caused significant flooding. And that means that they don't need to be that potent to be that problematic. So we're not going to be as concerned for, is it a category 2 or 3 for activation? You really need to be paying attention this year when we go into our tropical cyclones over here in the Atlantic for the amount of rain that they're capable of producing. Arthur set a new record for Louisiana as just a tropical storm for the amount of rainfall produced in a 24-hour window, and that was against other previous hurricanes. So when we're looking at this, just be aware, internationally speaking, we're ahead of the curve when it comes to potency of tropical cyclone strength, and then the amount of rainfall that is coming down. So looking at Dolphin over there in the Pacific, there is a potential for that storm to reach 200-mile-per-hour sustained winds. That's not gusts, that's sustained. So this storm is a really good indicator that the entirety of the basin is far too ripe for the amount of productivity we're likely going to see. These are the different track paths now that the Azores High is getting into position, which means that this is the flow. It's going to be one of 3 flows. You just want to pay attention to where the core for the high pressure is when we're talking about any tropical landfalls. It's just a really good map for you guys to reference just going into the season. And then this gives everyone the explanation. Anytime somebody says, why can't the storm go this way? Why does the storm do X, Y, Z? Just remember that the storms follow this general track path, become extratropical, and then make their way up and over to Europe. They don't dissipate. They don't go away. They just make their way in a different direction in a different form. So that's just really a sort of 101 on the science when it comes to the secondary parts of hurricanes specifically. But we are looking for some pretty significant contributions from the low flowing river drought situation. And then, of course, wildfire evaporative demand, flash flooding, increased lightning, stronger wind damage from our severe weather, and weaker vegetation in full. So I know there's not a lot of positive information, but at least it's very honest. And I hope that everybody at least feels a little bit more empowered with the situation as we go into it. So with that, I can hold for any questions.
I'm going to assume that the slides will be posted on the CEEPC webpage.
Yes, I've made them available both as a PowerPoint and a PDF.
Great, because I would like to share them with some folks. Are there any comments or questions?
I do have a question. Thank you so much, Sonny, for the really good presentation. I just wanted to know if you're able to speak a bit more to someone who might be lay on how El Nino interacts with climate change and what those interactions could mean for the DMV or particularly our area.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's a really good point. So to be aware, El Nino, the last time in 2015 to 2016, what it contributed for specifically us, but also on the global scale, was that next step ladder that gave us the elevation for the warmest decade on record. So for the most of the stats you've seen that have come out that have said the last 9 years, the last 7 years are the warmest that we've had, those all kicked off from the 2015 El Nino event. So this means that this El Nino, being mimicking of that one, is likely to create that next step ladder up, go up the next threshold for the next decade, which means we are expecting for a lot of these storms to violate our modeled trends for us to be able to say we're expecting 2 to 3 inches, and then the storm produces 5 to 6 because the model doesn't have a baseline understanding of the fact that we're elevated up that far from the baseline. Because again, all models are based off of climatological norms. So as we go into the rest of the season, the models are arguably going to give you the best case scenario when it comes to the weather event, and that you'll need to do your own additive for your area based off of recent trends of what the heat is likely going to be contributing until we can get our modelers a little bit further forward on the forecast. But expect that these heat domes are going nowhere. El Nino and heat domes go hand in hand. So our high pressures usually sit a lot longer and they usually produce more record temperatures. So we're not expecting to get a break in these events. And we are expecting for this winter a similar event, but on the freezing cold side of the house. And we're already seeing that in Australia, where they went from their warmest summer on record to one of their coldest winters ever in multiple cities for the longest period of time. So likely going to see a lot of stress on the grid systems. I know we've already seen that there were numerous declarations done by the energy system, so there's just not enough energy. We're expecting to hit Deadpool over there in the Colorado River Basin on hydroelectric. So the market price for energy likely going to struggle as we go forward.
Thank you so much.
I have a question, Chair. So my name is Laura Tacroni, and I'm new to this committee. Supervisor Sains um, gave me the pleasure of joining this committee. But I heard you say something. Loudoun County has the data center alley, and I saw your slide, and you mentioned that they're sinking and that 2 moats have been put in. Could you explain that a little bit further? Because this is the first time I'm hearing about that.
Yeah, so there's been a couple of new studies done over the last 5 years that built on studies from the previous 10 that we knew that subsidence was going to be an issue. Obviously, coastal erosion is its own problem set, but the subsidence, the overarching sinking of the land, when the data centers were put in, while they were compacting the soil technically properly, a lot of them were put in without doing mapping of the aquifer system underneath them. And the aquifer table in and of itself is shrinking there, and by they're compressing down, but some of the data centers have also purchased some access to well water, which has resulted in an overpumping in some of the aquifer basin. And that's resulted in a more rapid onset of the sinking. So the most recent flood events in that area have caused some inundation concerns for the property owners. And their response, instead of reporting or working with the communities on doing flood barrier systems or addressing the overarching of where the water's flowing to, was essentially to dig surrounding trenches around the property for the water to flow into, and they referred to them as moats. So the size and the depth of the digouts would mimic that of almost a medieval moat system for one of them in what they're planning to dig in. The other 2 have done them further into the property line. So I've been sort of plug and playing with the information from the subsidence maps and where exactly some of the data centers sit within the subsidence map basin. I can also send over all of the subsidence maps as well and all the different studies for Virginia specifically. But our sinking rate in the state of Virginia, as well as with the coastal erosion, are notably higher than the surrounding states are. So we're becoming one of the leading areas for sinking because of something that's going on in Data Center Alley.
So, Sunny, I would appreciate any of that information. That would be very informative, and I would like to share that with my board. So, thank you very
Absolutely.
much.
I have all the different links as well. So you'll be able to see the general one-pagers and then all of the information that backs the one-pagers.
Okay, thank you very
Hi,
much.
Sunny. My name is John Lord. I work with Fairfax County Public Schools. I have a comment and a question for you. When I worked for Loudoun County Schools in 2015, we actually had a solar array that was 11 kW that was torn off the roof of Frederick Douglass Elementary School because of high winds that were produced by the last El Nino. And I'm sort of saying that as a cautionary thought, but can you comment on what you might expect from high winds, gusting, and that kind of damage that can be produced, please? Thank you.
Yeah, the record-setting winds that we've seen, even in South Dakota, again, so South Dakota, no stranger to strong winds, so set a new record, as well as multiple other states with the peak winds from their straight lines. So straight line wind events are where the energy for a supercell builds vertically, and then something happens in its forward progress, and it overruns itself, collapses downward, and then all of the energy that would have been a supercell is now directly forced into one specific spot, often either flattening a gas station or ripping roofs off of numerous buildings. So these outflow boundaries, the derechos that can come subsequently from an outflow that is notably stronger, these are affiliated with El Nino because extreme heat destabilizes the atmosphere. And then we typically have heightened wildfire smoke, and wildfire smoke creates a friction field, which adds to the destabilization matrix. So our models won't understand that the smoke is there and the role that the smoke plays in the thunderstorm's vertical column of stability. So very similar when you see like a tornado, the more vertical the tornado, the stronger it is, the more it's bent diagonal, the weaker it typically is. So we have that same problem with all of our supercells. El Nino giving us this next step up in extreme heat. While extreme heat is problematic, each one of these thunderstorms is going to try to form at a greater height than usual. So they're going to try to be taller than usual because extreme heat amplifies the available vertical space for a storm to take up. So this will enable these storms to collapse down at a rate that we haven't seen yet. So we are expecting for things like microbursts, straight line wind damage to be notably higher and more potent across areas that maybe haven't seen a microburst yet and are likely going to take some pretty substantial ripple effect damage. So when a microburst comes in, the initial area gets flattened or hit very aggressively from straight down, and then the blowout that happens can often take out even more infrastructure like power lines and trees, and then do some pretty significant damage to houses and roofs. Does that answer that, or did that just kind of like speak to the
No,
generality?
that was perfect. Thank you. And really, I just want people to be aware of the risk because a lot of jurisdictions have been putting solar on roofs, and we've often been putting them on with what's called a ballast rather than like being bolted down. And a ballast is just a heavy weight that holds the panels on the roof. And those, when they act like a sail and you get this huge amount of wind energy, it can create a real dangerous situation. I just wanted to make sure people are aware of it and can pass it along to their staff.
This also applies to the canopies on top of the pools, on the rooftop pools across many of the high-rise buildings in DC. I personally witnessed one of those getting ripped off a couple of weeks ago and careening down onto the general public below who are hosting a festival. So tracking that solar panel arrays, because they're typically rectangular, that's where a lot of that problem comes from. They don't often buck them up against one of the blocking walls, and they usually build them over the height of the edge of the building. They do have some more domed out or rounded out solar panels. If the advocation is to remain solar, we should start leaning forward on finding some of those groups that do more rounded out paneling that can handle the force of the wind coming across.
There's also different ratings for the weight bearing capacity of roofs and the panels themselves. And there are like FEMA class ratings for solar panels. So if you're concerned about that, look into FEMA class ratings. Class 4 is the one that we are having to design some of our facilities to where they have solar panels, and that affects the type of ballasting we put on the roof. So it is possible to mitigate.
Thank you, Sunny. We could talk about this till noon, but we have 3 other excellent presentations coming up. So what I'm going to ask our favorite meteorologist to do is put your contact info in the chat so people can reach out to you. And the slides will be posted as soon as we're done with this meeting. I also, the meeting is recorded, so it's possible to pinpoint this section of the meeting and send the link to somebody with where they should look if that's a better approach. And we're going to ask everybody to mute. We're going to ask, because we are 15 minutes behind, we're going to ask Jeff King if there are any staffed updates that that need to be announced, or if there's just the materials that you provide every meeting.
Yeah,
for
let's
people to
go
read.
ahead with the meeting agenda, and if we have time at the end, we'll add a couple staff updates. So yeah, let's do that.
Okay, and again, yeah. Okay, so thank you. John Morrill. So next we're going to hear from Fairfax County on clean energy successes that they've had. John Morrill's the director of the Fairfax County Office of Environmental and Energy Coordination. And I want to take a moment to thank John for his long time work over the past 25 years in the region, and he has been truly a champion for energy efficiency and clean energy in the region. He's played an integral role over that time in advancing our regional goals. He chaired the first greenhouse gas inventory work group back in the beginning, 2006, which helped inform the first COG steering committee on climate change, and the 2008 climate change report from COG, which kicked us off, and here we are today. I really want to thank John both professionally and personally for everything you've done for the last 25 years. But enough of that. Let's hear about Fairfax County's clean energy successes. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm humbled by the attention to this and the spotlight on me. I'm going to give a pretty high level summary of what we've been doing recently in Fairfax, and as is often the case, it's really not one person. It's the culmination of a lot of work by a lot of people. So high level.
John, may I interrupt you for a minute? I missed the punchline, which is that you're retiring.
Yes.
I think everybody else didn't know that.
Okay.
All right, continue.
So, there was once a vice presidential debate, and the gag line was, "Who am I? Why am I here?" I'll use that here. My whole career has been in clean energy, which then evolved into climate action. My first professional position out of college was with the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy. And I think many of you are familiar with that group. It was quite small, and it was really a startup back in the early 80s. I quit in 1988, came back in 1990, and continued work there. After that career, or that stint with ACEEE, I started thinking, well, it felt a little bit theoretical, and we're talking policy and analysis. Wanted to kind of get my hands dirty and start practicing. And I saw an ad in the Washington Post, print Washington Post, classified ad. Arlington County was hiring an energy manager. And I looked at the description and I thought, well, that sounds interesting. Of course, it's also quaint that it was a newspaper classified ad that I got a job through. So I applied, and I was fortunate to get the position. Turns out that was the first energy manager position that had been created in a local government in Virginia. And so it was a tremendous learning curve to become more of a practitioner. And then I had a brief interlude where I quit Arlington and went to work for a startup nonprofit. Some of you might be familiar with the Emerald Cities Collaborative. I quickly learned the lesson that you should not join a startup when you're already feeling burned out. And so I returned to Arlington County. They hadn't filled my position, and I stayed there for another 8 years. As you might see from this description, my first lesson learned is don't burn bridges, because you can then turn around and go back and pick up sometimes where you left off. 6 years ago, I noticed that Fairfax County was getting more ambitious in the energy and climate space, and I thought, hey, they're a little bigger over there. Let's see what we can do here. And so I jumped to Fairfax in 2020. I'd also like to note that these remarks are mine personally as an individual. I'm not going to throw out any bombshells, but just let you know that they don't reflect official county policy. So again, I was the first energy manager in a local government in Virginia, and while at ACEEE, we had heard about and we were documenting the market imperfections and the institutional barriers to clean energy use in various, residential, commercial, institutional. And once I got in there as a practitioner, I came face to face with it, and wow, it was like we're not talking about the half of it. A major energy user in the county used very large electric motors for some key parts of their work. And I tried to introduce energy efficient motors to the staff there. And they listened to me, and then they got out their brochure and put it on the table and said, these are the motors we use. These are the motors that we know how to fix. These are the motors our supplier has in stock. These are the motors we know how to maintain. These are the motors that we're going to keep using. So that was an introduction to, okay, we need more than an economic payback sales pitch. We need to understand the processes. We need to understand really what makes people tick. And that kind of education is constant, and it's never ending. Just a few years ago, here in Fairfax County, we were speaking of a building where they were going to use ground source heat pumps and rooftop solar. And we had well-meaning professionals tell us, well, I don't know, that stuff is unproven. That stuff is kind of exotic, isn't it? I don't know if we know how to, I don't know if our guys can handle that. And that's the 2020s, folks. And so, the resistance to change, institutional inertia can be very strong. And it takes diligence, patience, introducing a little bit of, humor, just finding ways to work with people to get them to try. So from being the first energy manager in a Virginia locality, I'm now happy to say that there are well over 100 individuals in an entity that I was involved in helping launch a number of years ago, called the Virginia Energy and Sustainability Peer Network. And so with this group, Virginians staff can compare notes and talk about success stories and learn from each other, because as is sometimes mentioned here in COG meetings, the conditions in Virginia, the political dynamic, the regulatory structure, it's a little different from Maryland and DC. So in the past 5 years, Fairfax County has issued 3 complementary climate action plans. They're listed here. One focuses on county operations, one is community-wide energy and climate, and the third one is a resiliency plan for a resilient Fairfax. And I'll just briefly summarize a few of our successes in implementing these plans. And I'll have a link shortly that you can find a wealth of information on our website. But fundamental to this work, especially in a large entity like Fairfax County, is working with others and collaboration. I'm humbled to receive this attention. I'm working on the shoulders of my colleagues and those who came before me. Just as in those examples of educating staff on new ways of doing things, you gotta communicate, you gotta break down the silos and work together on these things. So in Fairfax County, very large institution, we have these 3 climate plans. Two focus on reducing emissions, one on climate resilience. There are staff in a couple dozen agencies in the county government who touch upon these topics. And so the wonderful creative staff here in Fairfax organized all these strategies, the actions, the goals, fit them into what strategies and approaches could be classified in what bucket. Is it codes, plans, and policies? Is it community services? Is it natural resources, facilities and operations, and so forth? So we have quarterly calls, cross-agency calls, that are typically attended by 50, 70, sometimes 80 staff from all these different agencies to help inform each other of what we're doing, how we're approaching things, and what's going on, and how we can move things forward. In addition, there are some community stakeholders that are involved in these groups, particularly Group 3 on community services, education, and engagement, because, as is often the case, the county government can't do it alone. We need partners. So just a few highlights. So the leading by example is always a wonderful theme, and it is a wonderful thing for localities to do. Our goals for climate action are more ambitious for local government than they are for the community. And so we have been investing in clean energy through deep energy efficiency retrofits and addition of renewables on county facilities. The awards have come in from Department of Energy, ASHRAE, the Virginia Energy Efficiency Council, and of course the dollar savings is there as well. And this is capital renewal. We also have multiple programs serving the community. We have Sustain Fairfax, which is an overarching educational campaign. Fairfax Energy Compass is there for residents. Green Business Partners is there for the private sector. And we have programming for nonprofits, homeowners associations, and the like, faith organizations through our Charge Up Fairfax and Energy Conservation Assistance Program. In resilience, the county has just recently adopted a resilient trees amendment to our public facilities manual, so that now that the climate zone that we're in is shifting and the conditions are getting a little different here, let's make sure that the tree canopy, the ones we're putting in new, are better capable of withstanding these changes. One of the wonderful community-focused resiliency programs that was just created, just invented last summer, was the provision of air conditioning to mitigate extreme heat in dozens of homes that did not have air conditioning. And when we get these 100-degree heat days, it's ridiculous. And the idea that there are, first of all, anyone in living conditions like that, but also people with children, elderly, and so forth. There are many cracks in the federal and state assistance programs for cooling assistance. And so this program fills those gaps. My little teaming symbol is here also because this was absolutely vital that it combined county staff working with these community groups with whom we were familiar through these interagency work groups. The safety net agencies were working with us. The community groups were working with us. We got volunteers to deploy air conditioners, room air conditioners safely. And now the program's been institutionalized to also address air conditioning repair for people. So we do have, some milestone events like the ribbon cutting for the 5-megawatt solar photovoltaic system on our landfill. Those things get big attention, and they're wonderful milestones to celebrate this work. I insist on pointing out that these milestone events are the product of hundreds and hundreds of hours of interdisciplinary, multiple agency contributions to bring things like this to the fore. There's a link there that should be clickable on the PowerPoint that's distributed that takes you to this office's annual report, which has further links to many of our programs. Jeff King had in describing this request to me, had said, and let us know, either, other challenges that remain or what's on the horizon. My crystal ball isn't terribly clear, but I've listed here some things that if I were going to continue working for another few years, I'd really want to be involved in. Battery storage is still coming on, and it's vital for both facility resilience and grid resilience. And the appealing thing about the growing interest in a virtual power plant is that that's a way to monetize and get value from the battery storage aside from its resiliency value. While I was with Arlington, we did a virtual power purchase from in a deal with Dominion, and Amazon was a party to that. We haven't been able to do one of those here in Fairfax yet, partly because the law changed, and now Dominion doesn't want to. Dominion has no incentive to do deals with localities because they need all the solar renewable energy credits for themselves, and just doing a deal with other private vendors has become more expensive. But we're still curious to explore buying big green power. Our program does lean into equity, and in addition to providing our residential programs for vulnerable residents, we're also mindful that there are gaps in the EV charging landscape, the geography of where EV charging is, and we need to fill those gaps if we want more equitable use of electric vehicles. And then you can't have a presentation without saying the words data centers. I'm not going to touch it politically other than to say I would hope that there is great potential for localities to develop deeper, more meaningful, and possibly lucrative relationships with the data centers and their clients, because it's not necessarily the real estate developers who have the deepest pockets. It is the Googles and the Amazons and the Metas and so forth, in a collaborative manner to really deploy meaningful clean energy locally. So my lessons learned, first, don't burn bridges. Twice in my career, I have played boomerang and gone back to a place I had left. But also, as I said early on, making change is hard. And sometimes staff get the impression from our elected officials that, you know, they hear the advocates tell them that this stuff is easy. Like, why aren't we doing XYZ? Everybody's doing it. Why aren't we doing it? And it's not just institutional inertia. There are often very strong legal, economic, and practical reasons why we aren't jumping as high as we think we might have the potential to. Also, as I age, and just looking at the world today, I urge everyone to keep the human interests foremost. Talking about abstract carbon emissions, it doesn't move the needle of the people we need to bring around, the people we need to take action. Those who really understand climate, really understand the energy picture, they're already doing what they can. But to understand how to make, help people be more comfortable in their homes, help people's mobility, help improve air quality. It has to be these human reasons for doing things. And another thing that Jeff King and I have discussed is I urge everyone to elevate your activity on climate resilience. The climate's changing, the reckoning is here. Sunny Westcott is a font of information, and my goodness, she depresses me. The reckoning is here, and yes, we're going to continue pursuing clean energy and carbon reduction to do what we can. But at the same time, localities have to recognize that there is so much beyond our control. Climate change is a global problem, but localities are uniquely positioned to address the resiliency of their communities in a serious manner. The tools are there, you're close to the customer. My final words are just climate change is global and resilience is local. Thank you.
Well, thank you, John, for that. Climate change is global and resilience is local. That's a great way to put it. We are quite behind schedule. I may have many talents, but keeping this group on schedule doesn't seem to be one of them. I apologize to the next speaker for shortchanging you all a little bit. So rather than take questions right now, John, would you be willing to put your information in the chat so people can get in touch with you individually? I imagine there are quite a few people that would like to have a conversation with you about what you just said.
I'll put my information in the chat, but please act fast because I don't want to put my personal email in here. So I'll put my work email but get to me in the next week because
Oh, I didn't realize you were that
I
much of a
turn
sugar.
into a civilian August 8th.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. So best of luck in your next phase, whatever it may be. And let's move on to the Commonwealth of Virginia's 2026 energy plan. So I have the pleasure of introducing yet another luminary, Josephus Allman, Virginia Chief Energy Officer, who's been patiently sitting through the whole meeting up until now and probably heard way more than he wanted to know about what's going on across the region. But this position is new. It's created by Governor Spanberg to address energy affordability, which we discussed earlier, resiliency, and reliability in the face of rising demand. And so we'll have an overview of the 2026 Virginia Energy Plan and a little bit of time for discussion. And thank you so much, Chief Gallman, for coming to be with us today.
Sure thing. Thank you so much for inviting me today. And excited to share a little bit about the energy plan that we're working on, and just to share sort of a little bit about the position. As Cindy mentioned, created through executive order, and the 5 directives in that executive order are affordability. So working with the SEC and utilities to try and put downward pressure on rates. And so we recently, through some comments that we filed with the SEC and Dominion's transmission case, trying to make sure that data centers and large load customers are paying for the transmission costs that they cause. Another directive is engaging on the regional level with PJM. And so they are in the midst of a couple of big proposals that they're getting ready to submit to FERC. And so have been engaged in that process since I started here in March, and do a fair bit of collaboration with my counterparts in DC and Maryland, who are also part of the Governor's Collaborative and have been working on that and PJM governance reform with me. I'm also tasked with legislative engagement. So all of the energy related bills at the General Assembly. Also a broad mandate to work with the Economic Development Partnership and the Secretary of Commerce and Trade to really try and source the whole sort of energy landscape in Virginia, all the way from mining to all the way to deployment of projects. And then lastly, working across secretariats, so working with other agencies like Department of Social Services and DHCD to try and increase participation in bill reduction programs that we have. So those are the sort of big 5 directives for this position as detailed in the executive order. Yeah, it is. It's a very expansive scope, but I think having someone dedicated to this topic is necessary at this time. I think energy's been more important in our lives. But I'm building out a team, so brought on a deputy a couple months ago now. Her name is Louise White. She was formerly with the Loan Programs Office with the Biden administration, doing some work on grid utilization and large loads and transmission. So she's been great, and now have an executive assistant that also supports the Chief Transformation Officer here. Part of every administration in the first year is the requirement to file an energy plan in October. And so that is also something that me and the team at Virginia Energy, along with the Secretary of Commerce and Trade, have been working hard on. And in statute, the energy plan is essentially a 10-year roadmap for how we're going to, get to the net zero economy-wide goal by 2045. That's in the Commonwealth Clean Energy Policy. And so this is actually the first time that the energy plan will be informed by modeling, so energy modeling, so actually looking at the load that's coming, making adjustments to that load if necessary, and then this very expensive, fancy computer model sort of figures out the most cost optimal way to meet that demand. And so that is sort of what we have been using to inform the plan, to show some pathways to get us to that, net zero by 2045 goal, while also still meeting demand in the near term. And so part of what we've done in the process of putting the energy plan together is held listening sessions throughout Virginia. So these have been sort of in-person, invite-only meetings that we've had. We started in Abingdon. We held a meeting in Newport News, and also in Northern Virginia. So I believe we were in Arlington. I wasn't at that one last week. And we also went to Danville, down on the south side. So those have been, I think, really informative, and we've gotten to hear from a good cross section around the state and see sort of what trends are in different regions in the Commonwealth. And definitely saw some variation across the different regions. I will note that we are hosting a open to the public meeting next Monday, August 3rd. So this will be from 5:30 to 7:30 at the Petersburg Public Library. It'll be basically 2 hours where we're just opening it up to anyone who maybe didn't go to the invite-only meetings. So looking forward to that, and would love to see anyone there. We've also done a number of sort of in between these in-person listening sessions. We've done, I think, 11 sort of focus groups at this point. And so we've had some virtual sessions where we speak to like members of the environmental community, members of the consumer advocacy community, industrial customers, data centers, utilities, really trying to get candid feedback in some more concentrated sector-specific calls. And so those have been really good to sort of get feedback. So excited about that process as we're sort of going through it in line with the governor's priorities and sort of what she ran on. There's sort of 3 big pillars that are emerging as we're putting the plan together. The first is affordable energy for every Virginian. The second is scaling clean, firm power. And the third is local distributed clean energy that works for every Virginian. So those 3 areas are what we're trying to focus those recommendations are, and have seen a lot of sort of alignment in those public meetings we've had, and feedback from the public generally. So I'll stop there, and I think I'm happy to take questions now or wait until the end, but did want to provide some space for questions.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Great overview. So, so you named a number of places where you'll be getting feedback, but is there a particular portal or a place where Virginians can the plan is open for comment. Is there some place where people can file comments? I think I didn't hear that part.
Yes, so there is a sort of a link where you can go, and we've got a survey there. So let me find.
Oh, and yeah, you can put that on the chat when you have a chance. It doesn't have to be right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Does anybody else have any questions? So we thank you for bringing us back on schedule. comments or questions on Virginia's energy plan for Chief Almond, or since Fairfax County is in Virginia, comments or questions for John? And thank you for putting that in the chat, the survey.
Chair DeBala, while we wait to see if folks have questions, one question to you and to the group is there any interest in CEEPC taking up any consideration of any sort of letter from CEEPC to the Virginia Energy folks about priorities? And I see, and I had some prior email communications with folks at MEA on the Maryland side of the river as to whether there are any kind of joint priorities. I heard PJM mentioned, for instance. That's one that is high up on our list. Eric, I don't know if you wanted to chime in and say anything about any state of Maryland perspectives. And Chair DeBala, if you have any interest in coordinating any sort of CEEPC input on that plan.
Yeah, so that's two big thoughts. And yes, if the group would like to do it, I think it makes a great deal of sense to share CEEPC's priorities with Virginia for this purposes of their plan. Yes, I think comment letter is very appropriate. And if anybody objects, this is your moment to say so. And the second thing being, I was going to ask also about Maryland, but let's let somebody else talk. Who have we got?
Eric.
Yeah, I think, from Maryland, I mean, we share many of the same concerns: affordability in PJM, large energy users, and how to address the impacts of those large energy users on affordability and the rate base. So I think we have many of the same concerns, and we are always very open to collaboration. And apologies, Eric Kaufman, Division Director of Energy Programs at the Maryland Energy Administration.
Okay, anybody else?
See Valerie Moore from City of Alexandria has her hand up.
Yes, hi. Thank you, Jeff. I have a question. I was reading that the governor just appointed Vince Maiden as a new director of Virginia Department of Energy. So I was wondering how your role and his role intersect or work together, or I'm just if you could clarify that for me.
Yeah, so Virginia Energy is formerly known as the Virginia Department of Mines, Minerals, and Energy. And so Virginia Energy is a big, I see Callie on the call, so she can correct me if I'm wrong, over 200-person agency that handles sort of all the oil and gas permitting, all of the coal permitting. And so that's a big part of the agency. And so Vince will be sort of running that big agency that has a lot of responsibilities that include the state energy office. And so that's where a lot of the IRA grants went and IIJA grants went that will be getting implemented out of Virginia Energy. So they are one of the agencies under the Secretary of Commerce and Trade, and I work very closely with both of them. My position is sort of cabinet level within the governor's administration. And so more of sort of a high level cross secretariat role focused on policy development. And I'd say Vince is more in charge of the day-to-day of running Virginia Energy.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions? I have a question about the previous energy plan for Virginia 4 years ago. Was it significantly different in terms of, not being from Virginia, I have no idea. Was it significantly different in terms of priorities and focus? Would this be a shift, what you all are proposing now?
It will be different. What was put out in 2022 was under Governor Youngkin, So it really called for an all of the above approach. Was not keen on the state's clean energy laws or, Clean Economy Act or gas initiative, which we're pulled out of. So it was a big focus on, coal, oil, gas, nuclear, solar, wind is all the above strategy. And we will be sticking to what the statute requires of the Virginia Energy Plan, which is a 10-year roadmap of a plan to get to net zero by 2045, and that's pretty incompatible with an all of the above strategy. So,
Thank you. I think you're being generous with the all of the above strategy, and that's the answer I expected. So that, from my perspective, that's a great shift, and thank you for doing that. Anybody else? Comments, questions? Can we ask COG staff to develop a draft letter, comment letter when are we meeting? September, is September 23rd too late? How long is the comment period open, and when would be good to receive a letter from COG? This question is for Josephus.
I would probably say sometime next month in August, if that's possible. The plan is due itself on October 1, so I just want to make sure there's time on our end to incorporate any good feedback that looks.
Jeff, we can do that. Yes.
We have time to pull something together.
Okay. And then if you all will trust me as chair to read the letter and sign it rather than send it through review for all of you, we'll do it that way, if that's okay. If anybody really wants to see the letter in draft, please let me know. Just put it in the chat. Okay, anything else on this topic? Okay. Well, I really appreciate Chief Alman, you spending time with us, given how much else there is going on in your life right now with this plan, and I appreciate the shift in approach in Virginia.
Well, thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, great. So speaking of local distributed energy, solar and storage, solar market strategies and balcony solar is our last topic for today. And I'm particularly interested in this because both Maryland and Virginia have new laws enabling local solar. Yeah, I'm all over our city housing folks. What can we do to encourage this, or at least remove obstacles? So I hope that you will be, among other things, able to address that. So I'm going to introduce Robin Duda, the Executive Director of Chesapeake Solar and Storage Association, and Cora Stryker, co-founder of BrightSaver. And they will provide us with updates on solar markets in the region, and we'll learn more about what many people call balcony solar, local solar for renters, which is now available in both states. So thank you, and go ahead with your part of the meeting here.
Before we get started, Chair DeBala,
sorry.
I'm just looking at the list. It looks like I had told both Cora and Robin to join at 11:30, so I'm just looking to see if Robin is here because I thought
we're actually ahead of schedule. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, you're right back on schedule. So I do not see Robin here yet. Hopefully he'll join. So we'll just shift it around a little bit. And Cora, thanks for joining us from the West Coast.
Oh, great to be here.
And we have folks on from both Virginia Energy. So Callie is the person in Virginia who's going to be working on balcony solar, and Eric Kaufman from MEA may have some perspectives from the state, since both Maryland and Virginia have just recently adopted the enabling
Yes.
legislation. Virginia has to do something, I guess, at the state level to make it work in Virginia. So Callie could speak to that. But a lot of us don't even know what this is. Although
Yeah.
Dale Medeiros there's Robin. Hey, Robin, thanks for joining. And Dale, I'm sure, is excited since a lot of this originated in Germany. So go ahead, Cora, get us started.
Yeah. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Cora Stryker. I'm co-founder of Bright Saver. We're a nonprofit dedicated to balcony solar or plug-in solar and making it available to everyone in this country who wants it. And actually, I just want to say I was born in Maryland. Most of my family lives in Maryland, Virginia. So I know those summers. They were bad when I was a kid, and everyone here knows they've just become wretched. And actually, Lorik Charkoudian, the lead author in the Maryland bill, was the very first elected official to reach out to us. So I feel really happy to be here. The region we're talking about, it needs balcony solar urgently. So I know we only have 30 minutes left. I am here kind of to talk about what it is, what's happening in Germany. I'm going to rush through these a little bit. And I know that you're going to get them as follow-up because I want to make sure that we all know the basics, but also can get to some of the interesting, meaty questions. So if you could go to the next slide. Great. So what is balcony solar or plug-in solar? This is it. So they are small PV systems, generally under 1200 watts. The one on the right is what we call the backyard setup. That one is an 800 watt. Those are two 400 watt panels. You can put them anywhere, but they're pretty heavy. But they're available to folks who can't get rooftop solar, renters, people who live in condos, etc. The one on the left is what we call a balcony setup. That is super low wattage, super lightweight, around 11 pounds. Almost anyone can lift it. So really, we're just talking about a different form of solar energy for people who don't have access to community solar or rooftop solar, which is fantastic, not competing with them, filling in the gap for folks who can't get those. So if we could go to the next one. And I think that everyone here, the appeal is immediately apparent. It makes energy more affordable. You can have resilience if you have a battery attached to these, and of course, climate. We can reduce emissions to reach those aggressive goals for, what was it, net zero by 2045? 40? Is that the goal? Anyway, super aggressive, necessary goals. So let's go to the next one. So this is Germany. I mean, I always like to show this photo, which is not AI generated, because this is Germany right now. You see millions of apartment dwellers, 4 million at last count, going up closer to 5 million now. And, you know, it's sort of a thing. This is what I imagine we will have in this country a few years from now. And there's so many benefits there. It's more than just the gigawatts we can put on the grid of clean energy. It is sort of the psychological dimensions of looking out your window and seeing this, and really understanding and it becoming palpable that clean energy is just cheaper for you and me, and we can do something about it. Can we go to the next one? So this is from our white paper. You'll see this is on the left, you have the cost of these PV panels, and on the right, you have the adoption. So not surprisingly, this is the cost goes down as more manufacturers come in and compete against each other. And this is the curve we want to get the United States on. Please do note, it took 10 years from the beginning of the balcony solar movement to where we are today in Germany. We all know we don't have 10 years to solve this. So we, Bright Saver, in collaboration with wonderful folks like you, that's our job. We're here to accelerate it and push it as fast as we can go safely. Let's go to the next one. Yeah, and this also, if you look at it, we're looking at really low payback periods. And This is from our white paper, which we released last November. We thought the manufacturers were going to do this on their own. Turns out they are moving a little slower than we would like. So as a nonprofit, we actually have dropped the price of these systems even lower than this graph shows as of today. Or as of, we launched a couple weeks ago, and we sell these units at cost, meaning exactly what they cost us to buy in bulk, $285.30. We can only do that because we're a nonprofit and philanthropy keeps us going. So again, our goal here is to jumpstart the thing so that manufacturers come down to our level and offer these as cheaply as we've got them in Germany. So if you could go to the next one. So these are just a few of the people. We did a pilot here in California. This sort of feels like old news because this was almost a year ago. But, we saw really quickly the need for this. Terry in the middle is a homeowner, needs a new roof, felt the investment was just too large for it to pay off, as he said, in his lifetime. And then we've got Sean on the right. He's a renter. He wanted rooftop solar. His landlord to do it. His landlord said no. There are a number of reasons, but it really confirmed our hypothesis that this would fill a gap among people who want clean energy but can't get it. Let's go to the next one. I'm watching the time, so I don't want to take up too much. I just will say we really had a legislative wave this last year, and yes, Virginia and Maryland are two of the best bills, actually, in my opinion, and are going to get us way further than we thought we could even come in 1 year. In the end, we had 36 states plus DC and introduced these bills. 10 passed. And we know that at least 30 are going to be introduced next year because we're already talking to the folks who are planning to do so. Let's go to the next one. So, I'm reaching the end of my time, but it all started with Raymond Ward. He's a Republican. He represents Utah. He passed this legislation that we're trying to replicate in all these other states. He passed it unanimously in deep red Utah. And it's very what this legislation says in its most basic form. It basically says that the regulations that rooftop solar and utility scale solar are beholden to, the interconnection agreements with the utility, do not apply for these little systems. That is the basis of it, and it sets safety standards. So that's what passed in Maryland, Virginia, we think soon to pass in DC and across the country. So there are different flavors of this legislation. I think we don't have enough time to get into that at present. So let's go to the next one. So this gets into the technicalities of how it works and why we need legislation. But I want to turn to our organizers. Do we have time to get into this, or should I pause now and take questions at the end?
Yeah, I think people would like to understand the basics of how it works, but yeah, we should then transition it over to Robin and then have questions.
Yeah, we
Okay.
have till June, and you're the last thing on the agenda.
I'm the last thing. Perfect. So, okay, so this is how it works. It's quite simple. And so everything on the left is what you'd see in a rooftop solar system. PV modules, an inverter, which converts that direct current to alternating current, which your home can use. The real difference here is that where you see the plug, if it's rooftop, you would have this inverter hardwired to your electrical system by an electrician. The really revolutionary thing about these and why they're available to renters is because of this plug, because you can plug it into any outlet. That has so many consequences. You can bring it with you when you move. You can own your own energy generation, even if you don't own your own home. That is the basis of it. And that is crucial to be, it is crucial that we exempt those from traditional interconnection agreements. And that's where we get to the right side of this diagram. All the legislation is addressing this final step. So what happens if you produce more electricity than you're consuming? And if we could actually skip ahead 2 slides in the interest of time, because there's been a lot of fretting about, is this safe? And I just want to say 2 things. One of the most pernicious myth about balcony solar, in my opinion, is that you could electrocute line workers. That is simply not true. The people who spread that myth, I think, largely know that that's not true. This was solved decades ago. The minute the grid goes down, the millisecond the grid goes down, these inverters shut down. And what that means is, say, even if your panels are producing more energy, direct current, it will never get through the inverter into your home. Thus, it will never get back out to the grid. So that is a myth. I would love everyone's help in dispelling. And the other piece of the interconnection exemption that we should talk about is, would these little systems feed so much electricity back to the grid that we'd have load predictability issues, that the utilities would be blind to this electricity that is coming on to their grid, and could that create load instability issues? And we were concerned about that too. We worked with Bill Brooks, who is on the National Electric Code Rulemaking Committee Panel 4, which is involved in the update of the National Electric Code. And he modeled this out. He said, hey, what if you had 40% of all Americans in every region that have these 1200 watt systems, which are the ones on the left, by the way. We're not even talking about the tiny, tiny systems. So even if 40% of Americans had these 1200 watt systems, you would not ever send electricity back to the grid at the substation level. In other words, if I produce more energy than I am consuming and I send it back to the grid, my neighbor will consume that just about on the spot. So you're never going to see any net export. And that's important to understand because, you know, we like to be friends with everyone, but sometimes we've seen publicly that utilities come out against this. And the arguments they use are usually twofold. One is the safety argument. Hey, we don't want to electrocute line workers. Of course we don't. We don't either, of course. That's a myth. The other piece is that we'd be pushing back all this electricity onto the grid from these little systems that the utility needs to be fully aware of. Now, there are a couple ways to address that. A couple of registration requirements for these systems. If those requirements are not onerous, we support them. And we feel quite confident from this analysis that we're not going to see very much export, if any, and certainly not at the substation level. So if we could go to the next one. So this is really a diagram of how fast we think the cost will fall. And this is key because we want everyone to be able to afford these. And, you know, I'll say I was in the first hearing of the Energy Committee in California, and this legislation passed unanimously, except there were 2 abstentions. And both representatives got up there and said essentially the same thing, which is, awesome, these systems are only $500, $1,000. My constituents still can't afford them. So, you know, we talked at the top about what role can you all play. I mean, we each have a role to play. Our role as a nonprofit, as I mentioned earlier, is to really artificially drop the price to stimulate the market, to not let this play out over a decade, but to be the leaders and say, hey, actually, we're going to take no profit at all and we're going to sell them at cost for $285. But the other piece of it is there may still be households that cannot afford the $285 for these little systems. And I think there is a role for incentive programs. We've talked to a couple government agencies now and we're designing incentive programs with them, rebate programs. So that is a piece of this puzzle as well. But we're not sure it comes immediately. That depends on the feasibility of such programs state to state. So I think that's all I've got. Is that it? Yeah, that's all I've got.
That's fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so hang in there because we have did we have another speaker?
Yes, Robin is on. Hey, Robin.
Hey,
Here's
good morning,
Robin.
everyone.
And then we'll take questions at the end or in the chat.
All right, I'll only do this as kind of a whip around. Good morning, everyone. My name is Robin Dutta. For those who may not know me or the organization, I run the Chesapeake Solar and Storage Association. We're a regional trade association representing solar and storage companies, and we're very active across Maryland, DC, and Virginia, mostly at the state level. But as the slides also show, there's definitely an overlap in some of the policies that we're pushing for, and some county level actions and responsibilities. Can we go to the next slide? So I'm organizing this really in boosts, headwinds around solar, and then talk storage, and then that intersection. It's a very clear trend in our region. The real momentum around policy boosts are coming from Virginia, from a very active General Assembly. Among the bills that we saw become law this year, DG Expansion Act, which is a boost for DG systems up to 1 megawatt in Virginia's RPS. This we do anticipate will help to stabilize and increase the rec market for small systems, and help to promote solar for residential and commercial systems. HB 1255 prevents a utility from applying standby charges for residential customers for systems that are at least 20 kilowatts. So anything over 20, there can be a standby charge. Just for context, in 2019, that limit was 10 kilowatts. So that's been gradually going up. And then shared solar, in Virginia, it's called shared solar. A lot of other places, it's called community solar. But the shared solar programs in Virginia saw a massive boost. This is where you, as a renter, as a small business, if you don't have access to a roof, can subscribe to an offsite system that is in your same utility territory. Dominion has quite a large program. APCO has now, I think it's about 100 megawatt program. So there's that. In Maryland, MEA does have, has been helping to promote the adoption of Solar App for automated permitting, and that speeding up of residential solar permitting can help reduce costs. So we do see that as a boost. And just to note, we're not seeing anything really in the way of boosting from changes to DC solar policy. Next slide. Headwinds. The biggest headwind is obviously the repeal of the investment tax credit at the federal level. This has already hurt the residential solar market for anyone who is trying to own the system themselves. The eligibility for customer-owned residential systems ended at the end of last year. If you wanted to lease a system, and then of course any commercial or utility scale projects, the tax credit does still exist. If you either got a maintain commenced construction for your project as of July 4th of this year, or if you are commercially operational at the end of 2027. So residential leases, C&I, utility scale, these sectors of our industry are now just rushing to meet all these various deadlines. And so that, and if you're doing commercial projects or public projects, I should say, that's also these are incredibly important deadlines. At the state level, headwinds that we're seeing, the SEC, the State Corporation Commission in Virginia, ruled to maintain direct transfer trip or the dark fiber requirements for systems that are over 250 kilowatts. Depending on where the system is to the physical fiber network for the utilities, it can add, whether it's hundreds of thousands of dollars to as high as several $1 million in project costs. I know this has been an issue for some school projects, but this is something that impacts net metered systems over 250, shared solar as well, and the maintenance of this requirement is a big headwind. In Maryland, the very quick transition around the net metering program is something that I think qualifies as a headwind. We're still, we and plenty of other solar entities are active in PC 78, the docket at the Maryland Public Service Commission, where there will be a determination of what that next program looks like and the valuations. But there's it's a whole other set of transition deadlines for projects trying to meet eligibility in the current net metering program, and we are trying to figure out what comes next in a large stakeholder process. So that uncertainty and uncertainty in general is very much a headwind for the business environment. And in DC, where DC also has tradable SRECs, there have been some very serious proposals to roll back the renewable portfolio standard, including cutting back demand for solar. And in DC, that's pretty much distributed solar. And we're seeing that's already in some ways having an impact on the solar, on the SREC market. And so, we're seeing some headwinds there. We haven't had fully funding of programs like Solar for All in a couple of years. And so, definitely some headwinds in DC. Next slide, please. I wanted to, Jeff reached out to me and was asking about solar. I'm like, what about storage? There's so much going on. He's like, yes, absolutely. So I made sure to have a storage slide. There's a lot of work happening in Maryland at the Public Service Commission in the Maryland Energy Storage Working Group. We're hoping to see some action around standalone storage. There's also work happening around the implementation of a law called the Drive Act for more behind the meter residential solar plus storage and dispatchable resources. So we're looking forward to a lot of things there. Virginia leading the country with storage. I mean, if you're outside of Virginia, should be talked about with California and New York among storage leaders in policy. What I've got on the screen, I won't go through everything there, but massive storage targets that need to be met by 2045. It's a big ramp up from what had already been in law. And there's the big question of just how do we get there? How do we get the private market in? How do we help people to adopt storage for themselves? So there's a lot of really good questions that have to be answered. But I think it's safe to say Virginia is a very big growing storage market. And then the second half of this slide is, I think I want to really emphasize the point that the blank piece of paper when it comes to storage policy is really a barrier. And so public policy and all the discussions around load flexibility, about load growth, data centers, and meeting demand are then recognizing the importance and the value of deploying battery storage for the benefit of the grid. But really, when we're talking about benefit of the grid, we should be making sure we're defining that as benefit of all the energy consumers. But in order for that to then translate, we need to make sure we have the programs that can provide the adoption, that provide the business case for deploying and financing storage, for homeowners, for building owners who want to get storage on their property, making sure that they can go through permitting and inspections, and that there are siting rules that allow them to do that. If people want to host storage on their property, and it's just as landowners, that there are rules that allow them to do that, and making sure that it's not something so arduous that they say, well, I want to, but it's too much hassle. I can't do it. Next slide. And then this is just last here, the intersection and the storage conversation honestly leads into this quite well. I'll do the storage piece first. It's important for local governments to have battery siting ordinances. We as companies and for our prospective customers need to know how can we install batteries on a home, on a commercial building, at a school? What are the rules? What's the permitting process going to be? What is the inspection process going to be? How long is it, can we expect it to take? Can we minimize the back and forth? We make sure that can we help counties better understand these technologies? So that's a big thing that needs to happen. Virginia does have a working group hosted at Virginia Energy around battery storage model ordinance. And so we're hoping that that can be a great source for helping local governments in Virginia. On the solar side, a few things to note. Going back to automated permitting, Maryland has a requirement for automated permitting, especially if counties cannot or do not have residential solar processing times for the permits of 5 business days. Virginia Energy is currently working on and just kicking off the process to create a statewide portal while it's a statewide portal, it would be connecting in with all local governance. Counties still have all the authority that they always have had to approve, review, and approve permits, but this is a way to automate and facilitate their work. It's not taking anything away from it, and we're very excited to see that portal come online next year. And then, this has been a big topic in Virginia around, or in the region around siting. There's the Renewable Energy Certainty Act, which was passed in the 2025 session, which is now fully in law. And then in Virginia, there's some citing limits for local ordinances, but really helping to gain some transparency so that we and everyone else know that when a ground mount solar project is denied, we can better understand why that is the case. And that's really the biggest part of HB 711. So that's kind of the quick whip around. I'm happy to answer questions. I'll put my email in the chat as well if folks would like to reach out offline. Thank you.
Looks like Cindy.
I'm coming. There I am. Okay. Thank you so much for that. That was a whip around, but that was very informative. So we have a few minutes for questions, a very few minutes for questions for either Ms. Stryker or Mr. Dutta. Anybody have anything on their minds?
There's one in the chat. I'll read it here. Thanks for sharing the work you're doing. This is for Cora. What are you finding with multifamily housing and housing rules, bylaws on balcony outlook relative to the plug-in solar solution? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute, Cora. You're on mute. Yeah.
Sort of, it's interesting. We're going to have to proceed on multiple fronts in parallel. So interestingly, Virginia's law has renters' rights. So if you live in Virginia, you have more legal authority to negotiate with your landlord and or your HOA. Maryland's law in its final version, it went through several sausage-making iterations, but it doesn't have that. So what means a couple things. One, there may well be a part 2 for Maryland next year to pass those renters and HOA rights. However, it is another parallel stream we're going to have to negotiate, and it'll be a little bit up to the HOA whether they allow these units. So anyway, that's what played out in Germany, by the way. So Germany did this in 2 waves. The first was what's proceeded in 35 states this year, plus DC. That's the interconnection reform piece. A few years later, they passed really rigorous renters' rights that would address this issue. That is when it really took off from hundreds of thousands to millions in just a year and a half. So that's what we want to be going for. And I'm proud to say Virginia, Colorado, and New Jersey passed renters' rights this year. And we imagine many more states will pass it next year. I believe it's still in the DC draft as well, renters' rights.
I have a question on that. Are you able to put, at some point, put links to Virginia renters' rights in the box here? And also, is there already a draft for Maryland?
You mean model legislation for next year?
Yeah. Yes.
No, it's not. So we kind of have to start the process over again. We feel optimistic it will happen in Maryland in part 2 this year, just because there's so much interest. I would refer everyone to our website. As a nonprofit, part of our job is to maintain a map of everywhere this is passed. So I'm going to drop in the chat. If you go to brightstate.org, legislative, you can click on each state and be directed to the state website where you can find the full draft. I really recommend you do it that way because they do get updated frequently.
Great. Thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a great question. It's definitely an important piece of the puzzle.
I would just point out that Delegate Charkoudian is a Tacoma Park and a Ward 2 resident. So I know her pretty well. Thank you. Anybody else?
And I had one for, I guess, Robin and Sun Yi. And Robin, before you came in, we had a great presentation from John Morrill from Fairfax County, and it led me to comment to the group about the notion that there's a conflict between utility and local government about ownership of SRECs, where you have utilities maybe willing or interested in looking at government properties for deploying large-scale solar, taking all the upfront costs, including maybe the direct trips cost and the black fiber cost. And you have this little bit of a rub of, well, you know, and the reason they want that is because they want the SRECs to comply with the state laws, but the local governments want the SRECs too. And so it looks like there's some movement on a discussion about, you know, how to share or something. I don't know. And maybe you could say something and maybe input on that.
That gets to be a little complicated because at least in states where you have, you know, DG Recs and SRECs, depending on the jurisdiction, you know, they're oftentimes used to help to finance the project. So oftentimes they get sold, and the utilities do have to own and purchase Recs for their own compliance. So some of it is, but there's no. Let's say a school is developing a project. It's behind, you know, they want to do it behind the meter. You can do all of that, and you want to own the Recs. That's fine. That just has to be calculated when looking at the project finances, and it's taken into account in that process. Typically, I'd say when a utility is trying to develop, though, on a customer's, whether public or private land, that tends to be a front of meter system. So that energy, so this, in this case, if we're using a school land as an example, they're hosting the system, but they're not, you know, it's not being generated for them. So the ownership question for the Recs is kind of secondary to where's the energy going and who is it first benefiting? Is it just going into the grid as just one other system, or is it something that it's able to be self-consumed by the school first, and then the excess goes into the grid? Because you can net meter up to, I believe it's 3 megawatts in systems in Virginia, and so you can be doing that. Another option for school is that you're monetizing the Recs that you're generating, you know, from the energy you're generating, and you're purchasing other Recs in order to keep an environmental compliance. Because the Recs are, you know, representing the environmental attributes of the energy, it's, you know, that's where it becomes tough. Do you value more holding on to the environmental attributes of your solar that you're generating, or are you looking for the financial benefit? And so it's kind of that. The Recs are essentially designed to be generated, sold, and eventually go to the compliance entity, which is the utility, or in, you know, Maryland or DC, any load serving entity, so retail suppliers as well. I would just proffer, and this is also some of our organizational perspective, you know, it's better to be, you know, community solar is great to be hosting, and that's also directly benefiting people and businesses by subscribing. But if you're going to host a system, why not be behind the meter and be electrically connected to that system, benefit from that? You have the option of also adding storage, because then you can be providing that kind of resiliency benefit as well behind the meter. If the storage is in front of the meter, it cannot help you from a resiliency standpoint, any customer, because it's not behind your meter, so it can't help keep power on for you. The grid goes down electrically. If it's in front of the meter, it's part of the grid, so it goes down with the grid, and it can't assist you. So that's, I'd say that the Recs are part of that, but I think there are some very key questions for any public entities who are considering solar or solar plus storage, in order to make sure that there's maximum benefit for them.
Okay, so we are out of time, and I want to announce the upcoming meetings. And then if people want to chat for a few minutes, I'm okay with that. But let's see, where are we? September 23rd at 10 a.m. is our next meeting. It will be virtual. And then November 18th is our last meeting. So we will see you in September, and enjoy the rest of your summer. And thank you to all of the speakers, and thank you to committee members who keep showing up and asking great questions. And with that, I'll close the meeting officially. And if there are any other questions that are burning, I'll stick around for a minute or two, and I bet our last two speakers will as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much.